We're here today to talk about the freedom of choice. Not just that you have the freedom to choose, but the freedom that choosing gives us. The freedom of choice. So what can I do about the world today? Well, I can watch the news and get depressed and call my friends who agree with me and talk about it a lot over and over and over again and build up the angst inside of me that comes out as anger against people who don't agree with me. That's one thing I can do. So if I can change one part of that, what might be the results? Maybe if I don't watch the news, whoo, think of that. Or if I watch the news and I pray the whole time. Because if I watch the news, that's exactly what I got to do. Because it's not okay. If I watch the news and even feel bad, but don't call people or don't hang around with people and spread it around, right? No gossip, no lamenting together. Just one thing. Those are just some possibilities of one thing that can change. There is always a choice. We are always at the point of choice. Always at the point of choice. But we have to be aware that we have a choice. So I say this often. If you don't know that there's a choice, then it's kind of like there isn't a choice. You know, the way I was brought up in a fundamentalist religion, I didn't know there was a choice to think about God any differently from how I had been told. And there were strict punishments if I tried, right? We talked about that last week when we talked about the importance of questions. But some point, some little chink in the armor that I had built, that my family and my church had helped me build, made me brave enough to go, and I think it was in a 12-step meeting when I read the words, God as we understood him. As we understood. Okay. I thought there's only one way to understand that. Is it possible there's more than one way? Bam! One thing different. And then I understood, even that I was still scared. It took a long time, but I understood there might be a choice there. I could make a choice. And boy, when I made that choice, it changed everything. And I didn't know how I understood God at that moment, but I came to know by asking the questions that I could not worship a God or be part of a world where the one God was mean and petty. The way I put it at the time was, I can't worship a God who's pettier than I am. You know, I know all my faults, and the way God is described by a lot of you people is that, is way worse than I would ever behave. I wouldn't wipe out whole cities. So I made this choice. I made the choice that I would worship. Worship's not really the word, but I would be willing to dedicate my life to love. And so if God is love, awesome. And if God's not love, I'm still going with love. And when I made that choice over the years, I came to see very clearly that God is love. That all that other stuff is just made up stuff that humans came up with because of their fear. Because of their fear. How can we bargain with this God so that when he's mad with other people and not with me, basically? How can I tell a story so that I look like the good guy and the other people look like the bad guy? All of that has something to do with how this book came together that is worshipped by most of Christendom. So this idea that I get to choose, I can choose love or fear. And A Course in Miracles is very clear about that. So there's only one thing you have to do in every moment. Choose love or fear. Are you doing what you're doing because you're afraid not to? Or are you doing what you're doing because you love? Because you are consciously sending love into the situation, to the person, into the world, to yourself. Do I choose love or fear? Every moment I can try to keep that choice in the forefront of my mind. And it's not easy to keep that choice in the forefront of my mind because I get ticked off real easily. But I can remember again. I can remember again. And if I remember enough times, then it becomes a habit to remember. And in some situations, I've gotten to the point where I do remember all the time. I have enough of a habit in a certain situation to react in a certain way that is loving rather than fearful. And then there's all the other millions of situations in my life. But we get to decide a life of intentionality, not a life of default, not a life of denial, okay? I don't like that, so I'm just not going to look at it. I'm going to pretend it's not that way. Or what if I look at it head on and go, I have a choice about how I perceive this, and I choose to perceive it in a way that makes me feel loving and loved. How do I do that? Sometimes I have to be really creative. Beginner's mind, the Buddhists talk about, that there is no room in expert mind. If you already know, it's too late. But if you can cultivate a beginner's mind, if you can say, maybe I don't know everything there is to know. Teach me, world. Teach me, love. Teach me, God. Teach me. And hold open that beginner's mind without making the assumptions. We've talked about that too. We know one fact about somebody, and then we assume that we understand everything else. And that is a choice. If you make that choice, you'll know. If you find out how somebody voted and you just completely want to not be their friend or hear anything else from them, then you have made a choice that is not a loving choice because you disapprove of their choice that you think is not a loving choice. I'm talking about all of us do this in various ways. So keeping beginner's mind and developing mental immunity, as the Dalai Lama talked about. I love that. Learning to avoid the destructive emotions and develop the positive ones creates a healthy disposition of the mind. Jesus talked about that exact thing. He called it good soil. There were seeds of love that fell on rocky soil, and they didn't grow up at all. There were seeds of love that fell on soil full of weeds, and the weeds choked the love. And there were seeds of love that fell on good, fertile ground, and they grew up and they produced amazing abundance. We get to choose what the soil of our spirit is. The soil of our emotions, the soil of our actions, the soil of our daily lives. We get to decide what we're going to grow. And when we do, we get to grow love. So, beginner's mind, the other thing is decide your point of view. So we get to, new situations come up all the time. And we can't always I am not one of those New Thought teachers who says you completely control your world. No. But you control your experience of it. You control your perception of it. You control how you react or respond or don't to it. We get all of those choices. So are we going to select a point of view that is toxic, that sees everything as bad and that makes us feel terrible? Because when we feel terrible, we don't act very well. You may have noticed that. And then when we're not acting very loving and we get to feel even more and more terrible because we're guilty, because we're not being loving, then it can get to be a snowball that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And yet, if we hold a positive, a non-toxic vision of life, a vision of life that there is some love here, in every situation. What if you just told yourself, okay, I can't see it. This is really pushing all my buttons, but I'm going to assume there is some love here, and I'm going to look for it. And if I don't see any love in what's around me, then it must be me. I'm the love here. I can bring love to the situation, even if no one else is. I can bring love to the situation. We can bring love to whatever situation we're in. So we can start to see everything as either good, oh, this is good, or for my good. It's for my good. Okay, it teaches me something that allows me to grow in strength, that allows me to grow in the strength of my belief in my own ability to love. Win-win, either way. So we get to hold beginner's mind and select our point of view. Another thing that we get to do is practice. There's lots of things to practice, but I like to say this: garbage in, garbage out. Beauty in, beauty out. Where are you putting your mind on a daily basis? Because if you're putting mind on spiritual things for an hour once a week on Sunday and feeling really good about it and getting a lot of hugs, and then going home and seeing everything else as corrupt, then we are not able to create the fertile soil that we need in order to start looking at life in a different way. So what is beauty? Nature is beauty. Sometimes just taking a walk outside. Sometimes for me, leaning against a tree, putting my arms around it if it's small enough for me to fit my arms around. Do something to give yourself some beauty. I'm telling you, during COVID, I developed this habit, and I have not let go of this habit. I developed a lot of habits that weren't great, but here's a good habit. I don't want to watch it if it's going to be violent and have not a happy ending. And the happy ending to me doesn't mean that the good guys beat up the bad guys, because life is more nuanced than that. And too often, we can't even tell who's the good guy or the bad guy. I get it, some people can do that, can separate that entertainment and be fine. I cannot. It's like, I'm guessing that doesn't have a good ending. You can watch that when I'm not here, honey. Right? I want to read books that glorify the love of who I am, and that allow me to look on the world with more love. I want to watch programs and talk to people in a way that brings love. I read poetry. That's one of the ways I get beauty in. I listen to music. Beauty in. If it's positive music, like the things that we were singing here earlier, oh man, and if you don't just listen to it, if you actually sing along with it, then you are creating this habit that's like fivefold. So you're getting it in your ears, you're also getting it kinetically as the air moves through your body. You're getting it mentally because you're saying the words, not just hearing them, and you're getting it as you're speaking, and you're hearing it twice from the source and from yourself. The more ways we learn something, the deeper we learn it. The more senses that get involved, the deeper we learn it. So sing, y'all. No one's listening. We don't care. If you sing well, awesome. If you don't, awesome. My dad used to say, ain't no one but me and the Lord likes my singing, and I ain't sure about the Lord. And he was right. But you know what? My dad loved to sing, and he did. He did, and I loved that. I loved that about him. So, love or fear? Keep those questions in mind. When we're asking ourselves, what are our choice points? Well, there's always a choice point. Which word do I use? Do I use the loving word, or is there a different word I'm going to use? How do I show up in this situation? So, love or fear? One thing that we can do is to take to heart the idea that every person we meet is someone with whom we have a divine appointment. I wouldn't have met you today if I didn't have an appointment with you. I might not have let myself in on that yet. But if I can start making the assumption that everyone who comes into my life has something to give me or something to teach me, or is giving me an opportunity to decide who I am and act from there, rather than waiting to see what they do and reacting to that. That's the freedom of choice. That's the freedom of choice. Love or fear, a holy appointment. Jesus said, decide what you serve. Who do you serve? Do you serve love or money, he said? Because you can have money. There's nothing wrong with having money. That gets misinterpreted all the time, that you should be poor, you shouldn't have money. No, you shouldn't love money. You shouldn't decide that that's who you are and that's our purpose in life. Who do we serve? What do I serve? I serve love. I try to remember that I made a promise to serve love, and when I forget, I just get an opportunity to remember again. It's not an opportunity to beat myself up and go, there I go on being unloving again. It's an opportunity to remind myself, and look at that, I got to remember 7 times today so far. If I hadn't been ugly that one time, I'd have only remembered 6 times. Be kind to yourself. Use some humor. That's some beauty in that you can also give out again. So the Buddha said, what is here now? His question was, what is here now? Not all the stuff that I think because I've been informed by my past, or all the stuff that I'm afraid of because I'm projecting into a future that I have no way of knowing. But what is here now? And what he was saying is, be careful of the karma that you're creating. And I'm not going to go into a big lesson on karma, but just know that it's not tit for tat. That's not what karma is. But if you pay attention to what's happening now, you are creating your disposition in every moment. The words you say, the way you choose to think about things, the way you choose to look at things, you're creating your disposition. Is it a sunny disposition? Is it a depressed? Is it a fearful? Is it, we're all a little bit of everything. But when we think consciously, that's all it is. We're not talking about being perfect. We're talking about being intentional. Don't do it by mistake, or don't let a mistake stand. Do it because this is who you want to be. And when you change your disposition by the choices you make, then that is going to change your future choices. Does that make sense? So like if I'm gloomy now, I'm taking my gloomy self into a gloomy future, which is making me make more gloomy choices. If I am cognizant of, aware of, intentional about love right now, then in the future I will have had some experience with love, and the choices I make then will also be more loving choices, because you can't help it. What you do is who you become. Now, not in the truest sense, we are all love, we are all part of God. That's a non-negotiable. But who you become in this life has to do with what you're willing to do. Another good question is, Pema Chodron asked, are you open or closed? That's really beginner's mind. Are you open or closed? Are you open to what might be here for your good? Or are you like, I don't know if that's going to be good. I'm closed off. I got my wall up. Are you open or closed? Because she says every day in life you are presented with opportunities to either open, to either expand, or to shut down. So if we start seeing our choices as opportunities to either expand or shut down, just a different way to look at them, and then that changes what we do. When we look at it differently, we react to it differently, we respond to it differently. And Jerry, I'm sure it was said by many people before him, but Jerry Jampolsky said, you want to be right or you want to be happy? Which would you rather be? And I stand before you today to say that much of my life, I have preferred being right. Not only being right, but proving to you that I am right. And I stand before you today to say I have not completely healed that. But it's a question that I've learned to ask myself. I shared last week in the hospital when they were not doing it right. For my husband, they were not giving him what he needed, and I just got more and more, I'm going to make them do what's right. And then I went, okay, what are you doing now? Are you really going to change anything here? Probably not. So you need to put your energy where it's good and figure out what you're going to do next, rather than spending all your energy making sure that everyone knows that they're not doing it right, which is essentially the same as I'm doing it right. I'm telling you how it ought to be done. And I had to let go of that. And did I let go of it before I began? No. Did I let go of it right away? No. But I did eventually realize, oh, yeah, okay, what are you doing? I see what you're doing. You're trying to be right. This is not about being right. This is about getting your husband the help that he needs. That's what this is about. So put your energy there. And as soon as I started putting my energy there, things started to happen, y'all. That's the way the universe works. Is that I have a friend who calls it the pop-up people The right person will come into your life. The right answer, the right situation. The synchronicities just happen and keep happening. When you find yourself not finding any of those synchronicities happening, it may be time to ask yourself, where am I stuck? What am I stuck on right now? Am I stuck on being right? Am I stuck on making somebody else wrong? Am I stuck in my depression? Am I stuck in my fear? Just questions to ask yourself, and then make an intentional choice from there. Right, wrong, good, bad. We get to choose right or wrong. We get to choose good or bad. Is that helpful? Well, call right and that we call wrong that are actually situational, and that we call good and that we call bad, and we don't have a large enough point of view to even know if they're a good thing or not a good thing. Right? I will say, I'm not going to call it a good thing, but just an example from life right now is that we are now going to neurologists and trying to figure out what an underlying cause of Bob's fall was. If he hadn't fallen and broken his hip and been in that hospital and gotten those consultations, we would not have known to put together all of the symptoms and start looking for answers. We wouldn't have known. So it's not that I think it's great that he broke his hip, but I'm saying that his breaking his hip led to good things. And always, stuff can lead to good things if you decide it can. If you decide to stay open, if you decide to take a step in that direction, if you choose love over fear. And here's the beautiful thing, there is no private good. If it is good for you, it is good for the world. If it is not good for everybody, then it's probably not very good for you either. Hate to say that. There is no private good. And that can go in two ways. We can think about private good as being, I win, they lose. When we open ourselves out of that right and happy idea, then we get to start looking for win-win situations. Avoidance doesn't work. No decision is a decision. If I leave you with nothing else today, no decision is a decision. If I decide not to decide, then really I have chosen the status quo. If I decide not to do something, then I have chosen to stay where I am. Sometimes that may be a thing that feels helpful, sometimes not. So I ask you, when you think about good and bad, right and wrong, instead thinking about what is helpful. Is that helpful? Does it serve? Does it serve me? Does it serve the world? And that takes sort of the guilt out of it. It's not about you are bad, you did a bad thing, you are bad. You did something, maybe it wasn't that helpful. So maybe next time you want to do it a little differently because you have decided that you serve love. And if you forget momentarily, that's okay because you get to remember again. So we decide who we serve, we decide what we serve, and then we get to look at everything, every choice as will it serve or will it won't serve? Is it helpful or is it not helpful? And that takes all the shame out of it. Is this helpful? That wasn't particularly helpful. What would be helpful? What new choice can I make? Because every time you make a choice, you get to make another one. If the choice doesn't suit you, or it doesn't feel like it worked for you, make another choice. I've always said if it doesn't involve somebody being born or somebody dying, then it is a reversible decision. It is a reversible decision. You can change your mind, and that's okay. That may be the best thing that ever happens to you. The best thing that ever happened to me was my ability to change my mind, was when I started letting my guard down enough from my childhood wounds of I need to be right or I'm stupid and worthless, when I started letting that guard down enough to see that I can change my mind. And it doesn't mean I was bad or wrong before. It means I see something now that I didn't see before. So it's a gentle process, this process of making decisions. But if we decide, I don't want to go through the process of making decisions, just be aware that that is a decision. That's a decision that 30 million Germans made in 1938. It's like, I don't know if I want to do anything about this. I don't think it's mine to do. I think, it's not in my front door, so I need to do nothing. And that decision affected millions and millions and millions of people. Not just the Jews in the Holocaust, but millions, 20 million Russians. Because, we choose not to decide, so we don't have to feel bad about ourselves, but we also can't really feel good about ourselves. And I understand that most of the decisions you make are not that looming, or are they? Who knows? Who knows what decision you make today could inform some future you of how to be, which could impact a large number of people. And actually, here's the truth. Your decisions impact everyone because we are one. Thank you. All right, so we're just going to take that into meditation for a moment. And the Buddha said the best way to get into here and now is what is called mindfulness, just paying attention, not to the goings-on of the mind, but the goings-on here and now. So take a deep breath, if you will. And allow yourself to just feel where you are. There's a cushion under you. Probably not very soft. Your back might be leaning on the back of the pew. What do you hear? You hear the hum of an air conditioner? Do you hear distant cars? Just be with that. You don't have to think about it. Just be with it. You can open your eyes if you want to and see, what do you see right now? What do you see? And check with yourself internally. How does it feel to be me at this moment? How does it feel to be in this body? You don't have to do anything to change it. Just observe. What emotions am I having right now? What emotions? How are you feeling in your heart? Once again, you don't have to change it. Just know that it's there. Let it inform you. Where is my spirit right now? And what is my magical miracle brain making of all this? And again, just look at that. By practicing this mindfulness in time apart, time alone, time in meditation, if you want to call it that, we are teaching ourselves how to be inquisitive, how to pay attention to what's happening right now rather than make up stories in our minds. And that helps us to prepare good soil for the love that we already are to grow, to expand, to expand so much that we can feel it throughout our body. To expand so that we can allow our minds to be informed by love. Rather than this confusing array of facts. and assumptions and stories. And when we are informed by that love, we move through the world more gently. We cause less harm. We experience more joy, and we share that joy, because that is the nature of joy. So allow yourself to be filled in this moment with the joy of love. Allow yourself to be filled in this moment with the peace of love. And before this meditation is over, simply make a decision. Starting with the question, how can I be love in the world? The decision is, I will listen to the answer and I will make every effort to be that. For I am love. The very love of God in expression as me. The very love of God is right now expressing as each one of us. And that's a pretty good place to start from. And so decide. Whatever I do, wherever I go, whatever I think, whatever I say, I will do my level best to start with love. Knowing that when I do, I'll experience love and be led to more love, because that's the way it works. We're so grateful for that spirit of love with whom we are one. And so it is. Amen.